Everyone's obsessed with AI productivity hacks, but they're missing the real problem. We live in an age of constant digital interruption, where AI assistants ping us with suggestions every few minutes, yet somehow we're less productive than ever. The issue isn't that you need better tools, it's that you're stuck in what I call the 2025 productivity paradox. We have more efficiency tools than ever, yet people are less productive and more stressed than previous generations. I was trapped in this paradox too, constantly optimizing my systems, but never actually achieving my goals. Then, I stumbled upon a counterintuitive approach that goes against everything productivity experts teach. It helped me build a $2 business while actually working less. But first, let me show you just how deep this paradox goes. The 2025 productivity paradox that's bankrupting your dreams. The reality nobody wants to admit is that modern workers face constant interruptions that fragment their focus every few minutes. Research shows the average worker gets distracted every 4 minutes, and each interruption costs 23 minutes to fully refocus. We're drowning in apps that promise to make us more efficient while our actual output keeps dropping. I know this because I lived it for years. I had this embarrassing habit of downloading every new productivity app under the sun. My phone looked like a productivity graveyard with dozens of colorful icons that I'd used maybe twice before moving on to the next shiny solution. I was collecting these tools like Pokémon cards, but somehow I was still missing every important deadline and scrambling to catch up on basic tasks. The worst part was how good it felt to discover each new tool. I'd spend hours watching tutorials and setting up elaborate systems that looked incredible on paper. My workspace had more databases and automations than most companies. My calendar was color-coded with 7 different categories. I had AI assistants scheduled to remind me about reminders. But when I actually sat down to work on something important, I'd get distracted within minutes and end up browsing for even better productivity solutions. This is what I now call productivity theater. You look incredibly busy and organized from the outside, while making zero real progress on anything that matters. It's like being an actor in a play about being productive instead of actually being productive. With each context switch costing 23 minutes of deep focus recovery time, these constant tool changes were destroying my ability to do meaningful work. Recent studies show that people spend an average of 2.3 hours every day just managing their productivity systems. That's more time than most people spend on actual deep work. The cruel irony is that this trap specifically targets ambitious people. If you're lazy, you don't care about optimization. But if you're driven and want to succeed, you become obsessed with finding the perfect system. You tell yourself that once you get your workflow dialed in, you'll finally be able to execute at the level you know you're capable of. But that day never comes because there's always another tool or technique that promises to be the missing piece. I realized I was stuck in what I call the optimization loop instead of the execution loop. The optimization loop feels productive because you're always learning and improving something. Your brain gets little dopamine hits from organizing your task list or discovering a new automation. But you're optimizing systems for work you're not actually doing. The execution loop is messier and less satisfying moment to moment, but it's where actual results happen. The productivity industry has trained us to believe that the solution to poor performance is always a better system. Can't focus? Try this new app. Still struggling? Maybe you need a different methodology. Behind on your goals? Time to completely redesign your workflow. It's an endless cycle that keeps you busy but never moves you forward. I spent 2 years trapped in this cycle. My business was barely making any money, but my productivity setup looked like something a Silicon Valley executive would use. I had automated reports tracking every minute of my day. I knew exactly how long I spent in each application and which tasks took longer than expected. I could generate beautiful charts showing my productivity trends over time. But none of that data translated into actual business growth or income increase. The breaking point came when I realized I was spending more time managing my productivity system than using it to get work done. I was like someone who spends so much time maintaining their car that they never actually drive anywhere. The system had become the goal instead of the means to achieve the goal. This is the 2025 productivity paradox in action. We have more tools and knowledge about productivity than any generation in history, yet we're less productive than people who just had a notebook and a pen. The abundance of options has paralyzed us. Every productivity guru has a different system they swear by, and we keep jumping between them hoping to find the magic formula. But here's what nobody tells you about these systems. They're designed by people who already have their lives figured out for people who are still struggling to get basic things done. It's like a marathon runner trying to teach a couch potato by showing them advanced training techniques. The fundamentals are missing. Most productivity content focuses on optimization when the real problem is execution. You don't need a better task management system if you're not consistently doing the tasks you already know you should do. You don't need more sophisticated time tracking if you're not protecting the time you've already blocked for important work. The scariest part about this paradox is how invisible it is while you're trapped inside it. You feel like you're making progress because you're always busy with productivity-related activities. Your brain interprets learning about productivity as being productive. You watch videos about time management and feel like you've accomplished something, even though your actual work output hasn't changed. I watched my friends fall into the same trap. The ambitious ones were all obsessed with productivity systems, while the ones who seemed less organized were actually getting more done. The organized ones could tell you exactly how they plan to achieve their goals, but the disorganized ones were already achieving them. Breaking free from this paradox was the first step toward building my $2M business. But the solution wasn't what I expected. It wasn't about finding a better productivity system or learning more advanced techniques. It was about recognizing that I'd become addicted to the feeling of optimizing without actually doing the work. The real problem isn't that you need better tools. It's that modern productivity culture has trained you to mistake preparation for action. You're not unproductive because your system isn't good enough. You're unproductive because you've been convinced that having the perfect system is more important than using an imperfect one consistently. This realization completely changed how I approached productivity. Instead of looking for the next great tool or method, I started focusing on execution with whatever basic tools I already had. The results were immediate and dramatic. But first, I had to understand why my brain was so attracted to new productivity tools in the first place. What I discovered about the neurological patterns behind this addiction completely changed everything. Why your brain treats AI tools like digital cocaine. There's a neurological reason why jumping between AI tools feels incredibly productive, but actually destroys your ability to get real work done. Your brain interprets each new tool as a potential solution to your problems, which triggers dopamine-driven reward loops that feel almost identical to the pathways activated by addictive substances. This explains why you can spend hours exploring new productivity AI while completely avoiding the important tasks you're supposed to be working on. I had to face this reality when I counted up all the AI productivity tools installed on my devices and reached dozens of different applications. ChatGPT, Claude, Notion AI, Grammarly, Jasper, Copy, AI, Otter, AI, and many others that I downloaded after watching some YouTube video promising they'd revolutionize my workflow. The embarrassing part wasn't just having so many tools. It was that I was still procrastinating on basic business tasks, while spending hours each week learning new AI interfaces and optimization techniques. The psychology behind this addiction is simple but powerful. Trying new tools gives you an immediate dopamine hit because your brain interprets exploration as progress. You feel like you're actively working on your productivity problems without having to face the harder challenge of actually sitting down and doing sustained, focused work. It's like being a kid in a candy store where every AI tool looks amazing and promises to solve all your problems. But after trying them, all you end up with a stomachache and no real nutritional value. This pattern becomes especially dangerous with AI tools because they're designed to be impressive during the first few interactions. The demos are always flawless. The marketing shows perfect use cases where the AI dramatically improves someone's workflow. Your brain starts imagining how much more productive you'll be once you master this new tool, so you get excited about the potential rather than focused on execution with what you already have. But here's what most people don't understand about switching between different tools and applications. Every time you change contexts, you pay what researchers call a cognitive switching penalty. Studies show it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to regain full focus after being distracted or switching tasks. This means every time you jump from your main work to check out a new AI tool or compare features between different applications, you're essentially destroying nearly half an hour of productive mental state. Most people experience 15 interruptions per hour, which means they're getting distracted every 4 minutes. When you add AI tools switching on top of regular digital distractions, you create a situation where your brain never has enough uninterrupted time to enter the deep focus states required for complex thinking or creative work. You end up in what I call shallow productivity mode, where you're constantly busy but never making meaningful progress on important projects. The tech companies behind these AI tools understand this psychology perfectly. They're not trying to make you more productive in the long term. They're trying to maximize engagement with their specific platform. The business model depends on you spending time inside their application, not on you completing your actual work efficiently. This creates a fundamental misalignment between what's good for the AI company and what's good for your productivity. Recent neuroscience research shows that using multiple digital tools creates something called attention residue, where part of your mental capacity remains focused on the previous task even after you've switched to something new. When you're jumping between different AI applications throughout the day, you're constantly carrying cognitive baggage that reduces your mental clarity and decision-making ability. Your brain becomes like a computer with too many programs running in the background, slowing down overall performance. The most relatable example of this addiction is how we bookmark productivity videos and articles, but never actually implement the advice. I had browser bookmarks organized into folders like advanced productivity, AI tools, automation, and time management. Hundreds of saved links to tutorials and guides that I told myself I'd reference later. But I rarely went back to implement anything because I was always discovering newer, shinier solutions that seemed even more promising. This behavior reveals the core problem with AI tool addiction. You're not actually looking for solutions. You're looking for the feeling of being close to a solution without having to do the hard work of implementation. It's easier to watch a 20-minute video about an AI productivity system than to spend 20 minutes actually using basic tools to complete important tasks. Your brain prefers the excitement of discovery over the mundane work of execution. The stakes of this addiction are higher than most people realize. Every hour you spend exploring new AI tools is an hour you're not spending on the few activities that actually generate income or move your projects forward. There are usually only 3 or 4 core activities in any business that directly impact revenue, but tool addiction keeps you focused on the hundreds of peripheral activities that feel productive but don't matter. I realized this when I started tracking how much time I spent learning about productivity versus actually being productive. The ratio was embarrassing. For every hour I spent on income-generating activities, I was spending 3 hours on productivity optimization, tool research, and system setup. I was like someone who spends more time reading about exercise than actually exercising, then wonders why they're not getting stronger. The breakthrough moment came when I understood that this wasn't a willpower problem or a discipline issue. It was a design problem. AI tools are specifically engineered to trigger curiosity and exploration behaviors that feel productive, but aren't actually productive. The companies behind these tools employ teams of behavioral psychologists and user experience designers whose job is to maximize the time you spend engaging with their platform. Once I recognized that my brain was essentially being manipulated by sophisticated psychological techniques, I could start building defenses against it. The first step was acknowledging that the urge to try new AI tools wasn't a sign that I needed better tools. It was a sign that I was avoiding something harder and more important that I should be working on instead. The key insight is that tool addiction prevents the breakthrough moments that create real business growth. Breakthrough moments require sustained focus on challenging problems, not constant tool switching and optimization. When you're always exploring new solutions, you never develop the deep expertise with existing tools that leads to innovative applications and significant results. but understanding the addiction was only half the battle. I still needed a way to actually maintain focus in an environment where AI assistants and digital distractions are constantly competing for attention. Traditional productivity advice wasn't designed for this reality, and I had to develop something completely different. Deep Work 2, the AI-proof focus system. What I created was Deep Work 2, a system specifically designed for the AI-assisted workplace where pure isolation isn't realistic or effective. Instead of fighting against modern technology, this approach works with it to create protected focus time while still allowing you to benefit from AI assistance and stay connected to important communications. Most focus techniques completely fall apart in 2025's hyper-connected workplace environment. Traditional deep work advice tells you to turn off all notifications and isolate yourself completely. But that's not realistic when your business depends on AI tools and you need to stay responsive to important communications. I discovered this the hard way when I tried following the classic deep work methods of isolating yourself, and ended up missing crucial business opportunities while hiding from all digital contact. The old deep work methods were designed for a simpler time when distractions came from coworkers walking by your desk or the occasional phone call. But now we're dealing with AI assistants that ping you with suggestions, collaboration tools that demand instant responses, and notification systems that make your phone buzz every few minutes with supposedly urgent updates. I spent months trying to recreate the isolation conditions that productivity books recommend, but it felt like trying to meditate in the middle of a construction site. The breaking point came when I realized I was getting interrupted by my own productivity tools. I'd be deep into important work when ChatGPT would send a notification about completing a background task, or Notion would ping me about a database update, or my calendar would remind me about a reminder I'd set for something I was supposed to remember. It was like having helpful assistants who kept tapping me on the shoulder every 30 seconds to tell me about things that weren't actually urgent. Deep Work 2 differs from traditional methods by using selective connectivity rather than complete isolation. Research shows that deep work can increase productivity by up to 500%, but only when you can maintain sustained focus without constant interruptions. This system has 3 layers of protection that work together to create this selective connectivity. The first layer is digital boundaries, which means setting up your devices and applications to respect your focus time without cutting you off completely from the world. The second layer is AI assistant scheduling, where you train your AI tools to batch their interactions with you instead of interrupting whenever they feel like it. The third layer is attention anchoring techniques that help you quickly return to deep focus even after brief interruptions. Setting up digital boundaries starts with recognizing that not all notifications are created equal. Most people either allow all notifications or block all notifications, but both approaches fail in the modern workplace. You need what I call a VIP notification system that filters communications based on actual urgency and importance rather than the artificial urgency that apps try to create. The key is understanding the difference between reactive availability and proactive availability. Reactive availability means responding to every ping immediately, which destroys your ability to do focused work. Proactive availability means checking specific communication channels at predetermined times throughout the day while maintaining long blocks of uninterrupted focus time between those check-ins. AI assistant scheduling requires you to shift from letting AI tools interrupt you whenever they want to training them to work on your schedule. Instead of having ChatGPT, Claude, or other AI assistants send you notifications the moment they complete tasks, you set specific times when you review their output and give them new instructions. This prevents the constant context switching that kills productivity while still getting the benefits of AI assistance. The attention anchoring techniques are what make this system work even when brief interruptions do occur. Traditional deep work methods assume that any interruption completely destroys your focus and requires starting over from scratch. But research shows that if you handle interruptions correctly, you can return to deep focus much faster than the typical 23 minutes it takes most people. The specific setup process takes about 10 minutes but protects hours of focused work. First, you configure your devices to only allow notifications from sources that require immediate response, which for most people is maybe 3 or 4 specific contacts or applications. Everything else gets batched into scheduled review times. Second, you set up your AI tools to work in batch mode rather than real-time mode, so they compile their suggestions and complete their tasks without interrupting your focus. Third, you create what I call focus anchors, which are specific cues that help you quickly re-enter deep work states after planned interruptions. The transformation this system created in my work life was dramatic. I went from struggling to maintain focus for more than 15 minutes at a time to regularly working in 3-hour blocks of completely absorbed attention. During these sessions, I accomplished more meaningful work than I used to complete in entire days of scattered effort. The quality of my thinking improved because my brain had enough uninterrupted time to work through complex problems and make connections between different ideas. Most importantly, this system allows you to harness AI tools as productivity multipliers rather than attention destroyers. When you batch your AI interactions and use them strategically during transition periods between focus blocks, they become incredibly powerful. You can use AI to prepare materials for your next focus session, analyze results from your previous work, or handle routine tasks that would otherwise interrupt your flow. The income results from implementing this focus system were immediate and significant. Deep work sessions are where breakthrough insights happen, where creative solutions emerge, and where you develop the innovative approaches that separate successful businesses from mediocre ones. When you can consistently enter these states of focused attention, you start working on problems at a completely different level than people who are constantly distracted. The system also created an unexpected benefit in terms of energy and motivation. Instead of ending workdays feeling drained from constant context switching and shallow work, I started finishing focus sessions feeling energized and accomplished. There's something deeply satisfying about spending hours completely absorbed in challenging work, and this satisfaction motivates you to protect and maintain your focus practices. But even with perfect focus techniques, there's still one massive challenge that most people completely underestimate. The sheer volume of digital interruptions hitting your devices every single day creates a problem that goes far deeper than most productivity advice addresses. The 127 notification monster, and how I tamed it. I decided to track exactly how often I was getting interrupted, and the results were shocking. Research shows the average worker gets pinged every few minutes throughout the day, and each interruption costs us 23 minutes to fully regain focus. I had this pathetic habit of checking my phone during bathroom breaks because I couldn't handle being disconnected for even 5 minutes. The worst part was convincing myself that staying on top of every notification was somehow making me more productive, when really it was turning my brain into scattered mush. The breaking point came when I realized I was checking notifications more often than I was blinking. Every ping, buzz, or badge number created what I now call notification debt. Each alert becomes a mental IOU that your brain has to carry around until you address it, and research confirms this cognitive switching cost compounds throughout the day. Even when you ignore notifications, part of your mental capacity is still thinking about what they might contain and when you'll have time to check them. Think about trying to write a novel while dozens of different people tap you on the shoulder throughout the day. Some are asking important questions that need immediate answers. Others want to show you funny memes or remind you about events happening next week. A few are trying to sell you products you don't need. Most are just random interruptions that serve no useful purpose. But your brain has to process each tap and decide whether it's worth stopping your writing to respond. This constant stream of interruptions fragments your thinking in ways that compound throughout the day. Since it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain concentration after being interrupted, and most people get distracted every 4 minutes, you never actually reach full focus on anything. You spend your entire day in a shallow attention state where you're busy but not productive. The cruel reality is that most notifications are designed to benefit someone else at the expense of your focus and mental clarity. Social media apps want to maximize your engagement time. Email providers want you checking messages frequently. Productivity tools want to seem helpful by constantly updating you on minor changes. Your employer wants you available for immediate responses. Your friends want instant replies to their messages. Everyone wants a piece of your attention, but nobody is protecting your ability to think deeply about important problems. I started tracking every notification I received for a full week and categorizing them by actual importance. The results were shocking. Less than 8% of my daily notifications were related to activities that could directly impact my income or business growth. The other 92% were just digital noise that was stealing my focus and fragmenting my thinking throughout the day. I was letting my attention get hijacked by app developers and algorithm designers who had zero interest in my success or productivity. This led me to develop what I call the VIP notification system, which filters communications based on revenue impact rather than artificial urgency. The core principle is simple. If a notification isn't related to an activity that can directly generate income or prevent significant problems, it doesn't get to interrupt your focused work time. Everything else gets batched into specific review periods throughout the day. Setting up this system requires doing a complete notification audit of every app and service connected to your devices. You go through each application and ask whether notifications from that source have ever led to immediate income generation or prevented serious business problems. For most people, this list ends up being incredibly short. Maybe your payment processor notifications about successful transactions. Perhaps direct messages from key clients or business partners. Possibly security, alerts about your important accounts. Everything else gets relegated to scheduled check-in times. Social media notifications, news alerts, promotional emails, app updates, calendar reminders about non-urgent events, and dozens of other categories that feel important, but don't actually impact your bottom line. You turn off the notifications and check these sources at predetermined times rather than letting them interrupt whenever they want. The psychological shift that happens when you implement notification boundaries is remarkable. Instead of feeling like you're constantly behind on responding to an endless stream of digital demands, you start feeling like you control when and how you engage with different communication channels. Your phone transforms from an interruption device into a tool that works on your schedule. The productivity increase after implementing these boundaries was more dramatic than any other single change I made to my work routine. Within the first week, I noticed I could sustain focus on complex tasks for much longer periods. My thinking became clearer because I wasn't constantly switching between different contexts and priorities. I started finishing important projects faster because I wasn't losing momentum to random interruptions every few minutes. But the biggest change was in my mental energy levels throughout the day. Constant notification switching is mentally exhausting in ways that most people don't recognize until they stop doing it. Every ping requires your brain to stop what it's doing, evaluate the interruption, decide how to respond, and then attempt to return to your previous task. This cognitive switching burns through your mental energy rapidly, leaving you feeling drained even when you haven't accomplished much actual work. After implementing notification boundaries, I started ending workdays feeling energized rather than depleted. My brain had the mental bandwidth to engage in high-value thinking activities like strategic planning, creative problem solving, and deep analysis of business opportunities. These are the activities that actually generate significant income, but they're impossible to do effectively when your attention is constantly fragmented by digital interruptions. The system also revealed how much time I'd been wasting on low-value communication activities. When you batch check emails, messages, and social media at specific times, rather than responding to them throughout the day, you realize how much of this communication doesn't actually require immediate responses. Most people think they need to be available for instant communication, but in reality, very few business situations require responses within minutes rather than hours. Controlling notifications was like removing dozens of tiny anchors that were dragging down my productivity throughout every day. Each notification had seemed small and manageable individually, but their cumulative effect was massive. Once I eliminated the constant mental switching between different priorities and contexts, my ability to focus on income-generating activities improved dramatically. Most importantly, This system is completely customizable based on your specific business model and life situation. The key is being honest about which notifications actually matter for your success, rather than which ones feel urgent or important. Once you make this distinction, you can design a system that protects your focus while keeping you connected to genuinely important communications. This notification control became the foundation for everything else in my productivity system. But even with perfect focus protection, I still needed to figure out how to maximize the actual work I accomplished during those protected hours of attention. Flow state hacking, turning 8-hour days into 3-hour powerhouses. The breakthrough came when I realized that most people think they need 8 hours to accomplish a full day's work. But you can compress that same output into just 3 to 4 hours through strategic flow state engineering. This isn't about working faster or multitasking better. It's about entering a completely different mental state where your brain operates at levels most people never experience. The productivity gains are so dramatic that, when I first achieved consistent flow states, I thought something was broken with my time tracking. I used to work these brutal 12-hour days where I'd sit at my desk from morning until night, constantly busy, but making barely any real progress on important projects. I'd have dozens of browser tabs open, jump between different tasks every few minutes, and end the day feeling completely drained while having accomplished maybe 1 or 2 meaningful things. It was like trying to sprint through quicksand. The harder I worked, the more stuck I felt. Then I discovered that successful entrepreneurs weren't just working harder than everyone else. They were accessing mental states that allowed them to accomplish exponentially more during much shorter work periods. This completely changed how I thought about productivity and time management. Instead of trying to cram more hours into my schedule, I started focusing on achieving higher quality mental states during the hours I was already working. The flow state formula I developed is specifically adapted for 2025's distraction-heavy environment. Traditional flow state advice assumes you can completely isolate yourself from all interruptions. But that's not realistic when you're running a business that depends on staying connected to clients, team members, and market opportunities. My system creates the conditions for flow while acknowledging that some level of connectivity is necessary in modern work. Flow states happen when your brain enters a unique neurological configuration where the prefrontal cortex partially shuts down, eliminating the internal critic and self-doubt that normally slow down your thinking. Meanwhile, your dopaminergic reward pathway becomes highly active, creating feelings of deep satisfaction and motivation that make challenging work feel effortless and enjoyable. The locus coeruleus norepinephrine system optimizes your arousal levels, keeping you alert and focused without the anxiety that usually comes with high-pressure situations. Most people think flow states are rare peak experiences that happen randomly during creative activities or sports. But neuroscience research shows they're actually predictable and achievable if you understand the specific triggers that induce them. The key is finding what researchers call the challenge skill balance, where the task you're working on is difficult enough to fully engage your attention, but not so overwhelming that it creates stress and anxiety. McKinsey research shows that people in flow achieve up to a 500% boost in productivity compared to their normal work output. This isn't a small improvement you might get from a new productivity app or time management technique. This is a complete transformation in how much meaningful work you can accomplish during any given time period. When you're in flow, complex problems that normally take hours to solve become clear within minutes. Creative insights that usually require days of brainstorming emerge naturally during focused work sessions. Setting up the environmental conditions for flow requires more precision than most productivity advice suggests. Your physical workspace needs to be organized but not sterile, challenging but not chaotic. You need enough complexity to keep your brain engaged without creating distractions that pull your attention away from the primary task. This means having all necessary materials within easy reach, eliminating visual clutter that doesn't serve your current project, and creating clear boundaries between your flow work area and spaces associated with other activities. The mental triggers for flow are equally important and often overlooked. You need clear, specific objectives that provide immediate feedback on your progress. Vague goals like work on the marketing project don't create the focused attention necessary for flow states. But specific objectives like write the first draft of the email sequence for new subscribers give your brain a clear target that activates the reward systems associated with flow. Creating a pre-flow ritual trains your brain to enter the desired state more quickly and reliably over time. This might involve specific music that signals deep work time, a particular way of organizing your workspace, or a brief meditation or breathing exercise that shifts your mental state away from scattered daily concerns toward focused attention on challenging work. The ritual doesn't need to be elaborate, but it needs to be consistent so your brain learns to associate these cues with entering flow. The correlation between flow state frequency and income generation is stronger than most people realize. Flow states are where breakthrough insights happen, where creative solutions emerge, and where you develop the innovative approaches that separate successful businesses from mediocre ones. When you can consistently access these states, you start working on problems at a completely different level than people who are constantly distracted and operating in shallow attention modes. I started tracking my flow sessions and correlating them with business results, and the pattern was unmistakable. Weeks with multiple deep flow sessions consistently generated more revenue, better client relationships, and more strategic breakthroughs than weeks where I stayed busy with shallow work activities. The quality of thinking that happens during flow states creates exponential returns that compound over time. Temperature control is more important than most people realize for maintaining flow states. Research shows that slightly cool environments, around 68 to 70 degrees, optimize cognitive performance for most people. Your brain generates significant heat during intense mental work, so starting in a cooler environment prevents the mental sluggishness that comes with overheating during extended focus sessions. Mastering flow state entry transformed work from exhausting drudgery into energizing creation sessions. Instead of ending workdays feeling drained and behind on important projects, I started finishing flow sessions feeling accomplished and energized. The deep satisfaction that comes from sustained, focused work on challenging problems becomes addictive in the best possible way, motivating you to protect and expand these high-value work periods. But even with perfect flow state mastery, I discovered there was still one major productivity killer that most people completely overlook. It's something that specifically targets ambitious people who want to optimize everything, and I was completely addicted to it without even realizing the damage it was causing. The AI Tool Switching Addiction Recovery Program. The solution was developing what I call the AI Tool Switching Addiction Recovery Program, a systematic approach to breaking free from the endless cycle of trying new productivity tools without ever mastering the ones you already have. I have to admit something embarrassing. I was a recovering AI tool addict who tried every single new productivity AI that launched in 2024 and early 2025. The moment I saw a demo video or read about some revolutionary new assistant, I'd immediately sign up for the beta, watch all the tutorial videos, and spend hours setting up elaborate workflows that I thought would finally solve all my productivity problems. The pathetic reality was that I was spending more time learning these new AI tools than actually using any of them to get real work done. The breaking point came when I realized I had active subscriptions to 23 different AI productivity services, and I was only using maybe 3 of them regularly. I downloaded tutorial PDFs for tools I'd forgotten I even signed up for. My browser bookmarks were organized into folders like Advanced AI Workflows, Productivity Automation, and Next Generation Assistance. But I never actually went back to reference any of that information because I was always chasing the next shiny solution that promised to be even better. This led me to develop what I call tool monogamy, which means committing to a core set of AI assistants and actually mastering them instead of constantly dating new ones. The concept is simple, but goes against every instinct that ambitious people have about optimization and staying current with technology. Instead of trying every new tool that launches, you pick a small number of AI assistants that handle your most important work activities, and you stick with them long enough to discover their advanced capabilities. The psychology behind AI tool switching is exactly like serial dating. You're always looking for the perfect solution instead of building depth and expertise with the tools you already have. Every new AI tool looks amazing during the honeymoon period when you're watching polished demo videos and imagining how it will transform your workflow. But after the initial excitement wears off, and you encounter the inevitable learning curve, setup headaches, and integration challenges, you start looking for something newer and shinier that promises to solve all those problems. This pattern creates hidden costs that most people completely underestimate. Every time you switch to a new AI tool, you pay a massive learning curve tax where you have to figure out the interface, understand the capabilities, learn the prompt structures, and integrate it with your existing systems. Research shows that while 85% of professionals use AI tools in some form, only 4% of their work time is actually spent using these tools productively. Most AI tools are powerful enough that it takes weeks or months to discover their advanced features and optimal use cases. But tool switchers never invest that time because they're already distracted by the next promising solution. The integration headaches are even worse than the learning curves. Each new AI tool has its own data formats, export options, and connectivity requirements. Getting different AI assistants to work together smoothly requires technical setup time that feels boring compared to exploring new features. So most people end up with a collection of disconnected tools that don't actually improve their workflow efficiency. Decision fatigue becomes a massive problem when you're constantly evaluating new AI options. Every week there are new productivity AI tools launching with different pricing models, feature sets, and use cases. Your brain gets exhausted from constantly comparing options and trying to determine which tools are worth your time and money. This mental energy could be spent on actual creative and strategic work, but instead it gets burned up on endless tool evaluation and comparison shopping. Tool switching addiction specifically targets ambitious people who want to optimize everything in their lives and businesses. If you're lazy or unmotivated, you don't care about finding better productivity solutions. But if you're driven and want to maximize your potential, you become obsessed with staying current on the latest AI developments and implementing cutting-edge tools before your competitors discover them. This competitive instinct makes you vulnerable to marketing messages that promise dramatic productivity improvements through new technology. The AI tool diet system I developed helps identify and stick with only essential productivity AI by focusing on outcomes rather than features. Instead of asking whether a new tool has impressive capabilities, you ask whether it directly improves your ability to complete the specific activities that generate income in your business. Most AI tools are designed to be impressive during demos, but very few actually move the needle on the metrics that matter for business growth. The first step of the AI tool diet is conducting an honest audit of how much time you spend learning about AI tools versus actually using them productively. Most people are shocked to discover they're spending more time watching tutorial videos, reading feature comparisons, and setting up new tools than they spend using AI to complete important work. This ratio reveals whether you're treating AI tools as productivity enhancers or productivity distractions. The second step involves identifying the 3 core work activities that have the biggest impact on your income and choosing AI tools based solely on their ability to improve those specific activities. For most businesses, these activities are creating valuable content, communicating with clients or customers, and analyzing data to make better decisions. Everything else is peripheral and doesn't justify the mental overhead of learning new tools. The third step requires committing to tool monogamy for at least 90 days with your chosen AI assistants. This means turning off notifications from AI newsletter subscriptions, avoiding AI tool comparison videos, and resisting the urge to try new solutions even when they look revolutionary. The 90-day commitment gives you enough time to discover the advanced capabilities of your existing tools and develop the expertise that creates real productivity gains. The productivity boost that came from using fewer tools more deeply was surprising and immediate. Instead of having surface-level knowledge of dozens of AI assistants, I developed expert-level skills with 3 core tools that handled my most important work activities. This expertise allowed me to create sophisticated workflows and automation sequences that actually saved significant time rather than just looking impressive. Within the first month of implementing tool monogamy, I noticed my mental clarity improved dramatically because I wasn't constantly processing information about new AI developments and feature updates. My brain had more bandwidth for actual creative and strategic thinking because it wasn't occupied with tool evaluation and comparison activities that never led to meaningful productivity improvements. The counterintuitive insight is that using fewer AI tools more consistently generates better results than using many tools superficially. Expertise with simple tools beats amateur-level usage of sophisticated tools every time. Once I stopped chasing the latest AI developments and started focusing on mastering the basics, my productivity and income both improved significantly. But even after conquering AI tool addiction, I discovered there was still one massive productivity drain that was stealing hours from my day without me even realizing it. This hidden time thief had become so normalized in modern work culture that most people don't even recognize how much damage it's causing to their ability to accomplish meaningful work. Virtual meeting fatigue, the silent productivity killer. That hidden time thief is virtual meeting fatigue, and Microsoft research reveals that employees get interrupted by meetings, emails, or chats an average of 275 times during work hours each day. I used to have what I call Zoom zombie days, where I'd sit through back-to-back meetings from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m., feeling completely drained and exhausted. But when I looked back at what I'd actually accomplished, the answer was basically nothing. I'd spent 8 hours in conference rooms talking about work instead of doing work. The worst part about these marathon meeting days was how they made me feel productive while I was sitting in them. I was engaged in conversations, taking notes, contributing ideas, and participating in discussions that seemed important and necessary. But at the end of the day, when I tried to point to concrete progress on my actual business goals, there was nothing there. It was like spending an entire day planning a road trip, but never actually getting in the car and driving anywhere. This creates what researchers call meeting debt, which is how excessive virtual meetings create a productivity deficit that compounds daily. Every hour you spend in a meeting is an hour you're not spending on the core activities that actually move your business forward. But it's worse than just lost time because meetings also fragment your remaining work time into these tiny, unusable chunks between calls where you can't accomplish anything meaningful. I remember one particularly ridiculous day where I had 7 different virtual meetings scheduled with gaps of 15 to 30 minutes between each one. During these brief intermissions, I couldn't start any important projects because I knew I'd get interrupted before making real progress. So I ended up spending these transition periods checking email, scrolling social media, or doing other shallow tasks that felt productive but didn't actually matter. The neurological fatigue caused by virtual meetings is completely different from in-person interactions and much more draining than most people understand. When you're on a video call, your brain has to work harder to process social cues and maintain engagement because the visual and audio quality creates subtle delays and distortions that require extra mental effort to decode. This constant connectivity fragments your attention so severely that you never get the sustained focus periods necessary for deep work and creative thinking. Complex problem-solving requires long periods of uninterrupted concentration, but meeting culture makes these focus sessions nearly impossible to achieve. The damage to creative thinking happens because breakthrough insights and innovative solutions emerge during quiet reflection periods when your brain can make connections between different ideas. But when your day is packed with back-to-back virtual meetings, you never have these contemplative moments where your subconscious mind can process information and generate new perspectives on challenging problems. I realized I needed to implement what I call meeting minimalism, which means ruthlessly protecting your calendar time from non-essential virtual meetings that don't directly contribute to your income goals. The system starts with asking one simple question about every meeting invitation. Will this specific conversation directly lead to measurable business results within the next 30 days? If the answer is no, you decline the meeting and suggest alternative ways to handle the communication. Most meetings exist because they're the default solution for any workplace communication need, not because they're actually the most efficient way to share information or make decisions. Email, recorded video messages, shared documents, or brief phone calls can handle the majority of workplace communication needs without requiring everyone to be available at the same specific time for extended periods. The meeting minimalism system requires you to become comfortable with declining meeting invitations that don't serve your priorities, even when other people expect you to attend. This feels uncomfortable at first because meeting attendance is often interpreted as engagement and commitment to team goals. But protecting your time for high-value activities is more important than appearing busy in low-value meetings. I started tracking how much time I spent in meetings each week and correlating it with my actual business results. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Weeks with more than 15 hours of meetings consistently produced lower income and less progress on important projects compared to weeks where I kept meeting time under 10 hours. The inverse relationship between meeting time and productivity was stronger than I expected. This analysis led me to implement strict boundaries around meeting attendance. I started requiring agenda items to be sent in advance for any meeting I was invited to join. If the meeting organizer couldn't articulate specific objectives and expected outcomes, I would decline and suggest they clarify the purpose before scheduling time with multiple people. This simple filter eliminated roughly 60% of my meeting invitations because most meetings are called without clear objectives or desired outcomes. The transformation was dramatic. I went from 25 hours of weekly meetings to just 6 hours while achieving better communication outcomes and stronger business results. The meetings I did attend became much more focused and productive because everyone knew they had to justify the time investment with clear agendas and specific objectives. Reclaiming 19 hours of weekly meeting time gave me massive blocks of uninterrupted focus for revenue-generating activities like content creation, strategic planning, and business development. These high-value activities require sustained attention and creative thinking that's impossible to achieve during the fragmented time periods between back-to-back meetings. The income impact of protecting this focus time was immediate and significant. Meeting minimalism also requires developing alternative communication systems that handle routine information sharing without requiring real-time participation from multiple people. Weekly email updates can replace status meetings. Shared documents can replace brainstorming sessions. Quick phone calls can replace lengthy video conferences for simple decision-making conversations. The mental energy savings from reducing meeting time are as important as the time savings themselves. Virtual meeting fatigue creates cognitive exhaustion that reduces your ability to think clearly and make good decisions during your non-meeting work time. When you protect yourself from excessive meeting exposure, you maintain higher mental energy levels throughout the day for activities that actually matter. This approach completely changed my relationship with calendar management and time protection. Instead of defaulting to meeting acceptance, I started defaulting to meeting skepticism and requiring clear justification for any time commitment that pulled me away from focused work on important projects. But even after mastering meeting minimalism, I discovered there was an even deeper problem with how I was thinking about productivity and time itself. The time matrix escape plan. That deeper problem was living inside what I call the time matrix, where I was mistaking being busy for being productive and equating hours worked with value created. I was completely trapped in this mindset for years, thinking that success meant filling every minute of my schedule with tasks and activities that looked important from the outside. I had my calendar color-coded with different categories of work, scheduled back-to-back meetings, and felt proud when people asked how I managed to stay so busy all the time. The breaking point came during one particularly ridiculous week where I worked 78 hours but made less money than the previous week when I'd only worked 32 hours. I was sitting at my desk at 11 p.m. on a Friday, exhausted and frustrated, trying to figure out how I'd spent so much time working but accomplished so little that actually mattered for my business. That's when I realized that working harder wasn't the answer. Working differently was. This realization led me to understand how the time matrix operates in our society. From childhood, we're conditioned to believe that effort equals results, and that spending more time on something automatically makes it more valuable. School teaches us that studying longer leads to better grades. Traditional jobs pay us based on hours worked rather than outcomes achieved. Even our language reinforces this with phrases like putting in your time and paying your dues, as if time spent struggling somehow creates value by itself. The time matrix keeps people stuck in low-value activities that feel important but don't generate income or real progress. You spend hours organizing your task list, attending meetings that could have been emails, responding to non-urgent communications immediately, and working on projects that seem productive but don't actually move you closer to your objectives. These activities consume enormous amounts of time while creating the illusion of progress and productivity. This system is specifically designed to keep ambitious people spinning their wheels, because ambitious people are most vulnerable to the belief that working harder will eventually lead to breakthrough results. If you're naturally driven and goal-oriented, you assume that your lack of progress means you need to work more hours, take on more projects, and optimize your schedule to fit even more activities into each day. The time matrix becomes especially dangerous when you combine it with modern productivity culture, which encourages you to measure your worth by how busy and scheduled you are. Social media feeds are filled with entrepreneurs showing their packed calendars and 16-hour workdays as proof of their dedication and success. This creates pressure to match their apparent work ethic, without understanding that many of these people are trapped in the same unproductive patterns you are. I realized that escaping the time matrix required a complete mindset shift from measuring inputs to measuring outputs. Instead of tracking how many hours I worked or how many tasks I completed, I started focusing exclusively on results that actually impacted my business revenue and long-term goals. This meant identifying the 3 or 4 activities that directly generated income and eliminating everything else that was just keeping me busy. The first step was conducting an honest audit of how I spent my time for an entire week and categorizing every activity by its actual impact on business outcomes. The results were shocking. Less than 20% of my time was spent on activities that could directly lead to increased revenue or business growth. The other 80% was consumed by maintenance tasks, unnecessary meetings, email management, social media, and various forms of productive procrastination that felt important but didn't matter. This analysis revealed that I was using busyness as a form of psychological protection against the scary work of actually pursuing my goals. Staying busy with low-stakes activities felt safer than risking failure on high-impact projects that might not succeed. The time matrix provided a perfect excuse for avoiding the challenging work that could actually transform my business and income levels. Breaking free from time-based thinking required me to get comfortable with having empty space in my calendar and saying no to activities that other people considered important or urgent. I started declining meeting invitations that didn't serve my core objectives, stopped responding to non-urgent communications immediately, and eliminated routine tasks that consumed time without creating value. The dramatic life change that happened after escaping the time matrix was almost immediate. Within the first month, I was working fewer hours, but accomplishing more meaningful work than I had in the previous 6 months of constant busyness. My income increased because I was finally focusing on revenue-generating activities instead of getting distracted by the endless stream of tasks that seemed productive but didn't matter. More importantly, I started experiencing what it felt like to actually make progress on goals that I'd been talking about for years, but never found time to pursue. When you eliminate all the low-value activities that consume your days, you suddenly have massive blocks of uninterrupted time for creative thinking, strategic planning, and execution of important projects that can actually change your life. The freedom that comes from measuring success by results instead of hours is transformative in ways I never expected. Instead of feeling guilty about not working evenings and weekends, I started celebrating the fact that I could generate better business results while having more time for relationships, hobbies, and personal interests that make life enjoyable and meaningful. This approach completely changed how I evaluated opportunities and requests for my time. Every potential commitment had to pass a simple test. Will this activity directly contribute to outcomes that matter for my goals, or is it just another way to stay busy and avoid the harder work of execution? Most activities failed this test, which freed up enormous amounts of mental and physical energy for the few things that actually generated results. Escaping the time matrix meant working fewer hours while generating exponentially more income and satisfaction, because I was finally directing my energy toward activities that created compound returns rather than just filling time with busy work. But understanding these principles was only the beginning. The real transformation happened when I structured these insights into a specific daily routine that made outcome-focused productivity automatic, rather than something I had to consciously remember to do. The $2M routine breakdown. Here's the exact daily routine structure that generates $2M annually while working fewer hours than most people spend watching Netflix. The routine looks almost laughably simple when you write it down on paper, but implementing it consistently created more income acceleration than any complex productivity system I'd ever tried. The beauty is in its simplicity and the compound effects that happen when you eliminate everything that doesn't directly contribute to exponential business growth. This routine developed through years of trial and error, where I tested every productivity method imaginable and watched most of them fail within weeks of implementation. I tried elaborate morning routines with meditation, journaling, and exercise that took 2 hours to complete. I experimented with complex time blocking systems that divided my day into 15-minute increments. I attempted various productivity frameworks that required constant maintenance and optimization. Most of these systems looked impressive and made me feel organized, but they collapsed the moment real life introduced unexpected interruptions or challenging periods. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to optimize my entire life and started focusing only on the 3 activities that directly generated revenue in my business. Everything else became either automated, delegated, or eliminated completely. This shift from trying to be productive at everything to being exceptional at a few key things transformed both my income and my relationship with work itself. The morning component starts at 6 a.m. with a simple 20-minute routine that prepares my brain for focused work without the elaborate rituals that most productivity experts recommend. I spend 5 minutes reviewing my primary objective for the day, which is always one specific outcome that will move my business forward measurably. This isn't a to-do list of multiple tasks, but a single, clear result that justifies the entire workday. The next 10 minutes involve light physical movement and hydration to optimize my mental state without requiring gym equipment or complicated exercises. The final 5 minutes are spent organizing my physical workspace and eliminating any visual distractions that could fragment my attention during deep work sessions. The core work block runs from 6:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. and represents the most valuable time in my entire schedule. During these 3.5 hours, I work exclusively on revenue-generating activities with zero tolerance for interruptions, emails, or peripheral tasks. My phone stays in airplane mode, all notifications are disabled, and I use website blockers to prevent any accidental browsing or social media checking. This time block is protected more carefully than any meeting or commitment because it generates the majority of my annual income. The specific structure within this work block follows a modified Deep Work 2 approach where I focus on one primary project for the entire session. This might be creating content that will attract new clients, developing products that generate passive income, or handling strategic business development activities that compound over time. The key is maintaining unbroken focus on complex, challenging work that requires creative thinking and strategic problem-solving rather than routine tasks that could be handled by anyone. Between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m., I handle what I call maintenance activities like checking emails, returning phone calls, and managing routine business operations that keep things running but don't create new opportunities. This 1-hour buffer allows me to stay responsive to important communications without letting them interrupt my most productive working hours. Most days, this maintenance work takes less than 45 minutes because I've eliminated or automated most routine tasks that used to consume hours of my schedule. The afternoon period from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. is reserved for meetings, calls with team members or clients, and collaborative activities that require real-time interaction with other people. By batching all my communication and meeting activities into this specific time window, I protect my morning deep work sessions while still maintaining strong relationships and staying connected to important business developments. This approach prevents the calendar fragmentation that destroys productivity for most entrepreneurs. After 2 p.m., I completely disconnect from work-related activities and focus on personal interests, relationships, and recovery activities that maintain my long-term energy and creativity. This boundary feels counterintuitive because most business advice encourages working longer hours to achieve better results. But protecting my energy and mental clarity has been crucial for maintaining the high-quality thinking that happens during my morning work sessions. The evening routine is deliberately minimal and focuses on preparing for the next day's success, rather than trying to squeeze additional productivity from exhausted mental resources. I spend 10 minutes reviewing what I accomplished during my deep work session and identifying the specific objective for tomorrow's focus time. This brief planning session ensures I can start the next day immediately with challenging work instead of wasting morning mental energy on decision-making or task selection. The psychology behind why this routine works when other productivity systems fail comes down to its focus on energy management rather than time management. Most productivity advice assumes you have consistent energy levels throughout the day and encourages you to fill every available hour with productive activities. But research shows that mental energy follows predictable patterns, and trying to do high-value work when your brain is tired leads to poor decisions and mediocre results. This routine prioritizes the few hours when my mental capacity is at its peak and protects those hours from any activity that doesn't directly contribute to business growth. Instead of basing productivity on hours worked, this system measures outcomes and results. Research shows that while 85% of professionals use productivity tools, only 4% of their work time actually generates meaningful output. This massive gap between time spent and value created reveals why traditional approaches fail. The adaptability comes from focusing on principles rather than specific activities or time schedules. The core concept is identifying your highest value activities and protecting your peak mental energy for those activities while minimizing or eliminating everything else. This approach works whether you're building a consulting business, creating digital products, developing software, or running a traditional service company, because every business model has a few core activities that drive the majority of results. The biggest mindset shift required to stick with this routine is accepting that it feels too simple to work compared to the complex productivity systems that most successful people seem to follow. There's psychological comfort in having elaborate systems with multiple components because they make you feel like you're doing everything possible to optimize your performance. But complexity becomes the enemy of consistency, and consistency is what creates compound results over time. The income acceleration that happens when this routine becomes automatic is dramatic and measurable. Within the first month of implementation, I noticed improvements in both the quantity and quality of my work output. Within 3 months, the compound effects of consistent deep work sessions started generating business opportunities and revenue streams that hadn't existed before. Within 6 months, my annual income had doubled, while my total working hours had decreased by roughly 40%. This routine works because it prioritizes the few activities that create exponential returns while eliminating everything else that keeps you busy but doesn't move you forward. But the real test of any productivity system isn't how impressive it looks on paper or how well it works for the person who created it. Why this routine beats every productivity guru system. The real test comes down to whether a system works consistently for people dealing with the constant interruptions and energy fluctuations that define modern work life. This system outperforms every popular productivity method because it's designed for real people who deal with actual human problems, not productivity robots who can maintain perfect schedules in sterile environments. I know this because I spent years trying and failing with countless guru systems that looked incredible on Instagram, but completely fell apart when I tried to implement them in my messy, unpredictable real life. I remember following this one productivity expert who had this elaborate morning routine that took 3 hours to complete. Wake up at 4 a.m., meditate for 45 minutes, journal for 30 minutes, do yoga for 45 minutes, read for 30 minutes, then spend another 30 minutes planning the day in meticulous detail. The guy's Instagram posts showed him in perfect lighting with matching workout clothes, sitting in what looked like a meditation retreat center, writing in leather-bound journals with expensive pens. It looked so inspiring and transformative that I immediately tried to copy his entire system. The reality was a disaster. My first attempt lasted exactly 3 days before I gave up completely. Waking up at 4 a.m. meant going to bed at 9 p.m., which conflicted with evening commitments and social activities that were important for my business relationships. The meditation sessions felt forced and uncomfortable because I was constantly worried about the time and whether I was doing it correctly. The journaling became another task to check off rather than a meaningful reflection practice. By day 4, I was exhausted and behind on actual work because I'd spent so much time on morning optimization that I had no energy left for the activities that generated income. The fundamental problem with most guru systems is they optimize for perfection instead of consistency. These systems are designed by people who have complete control over their environment, unlimited resources, and assistants to handle all the mundane details that normal people have to manage themselves. Research shows that 73% of workers struggle with maintaining rigid productivity systems because they assume you can wake up at exactly the same time every day, work in distraction-free environments, and maintain the same energy levels regardless of stress, sleep quality, or life circumstances. This creates what I call sustainable productivity versus sprint productivity. Sprint productivity looks impressive for short periods because you're following elaborate systems that make you feel highly organized and optimized. But these systems require constant willpower and perfect conditions to maintain, so they inevitably break down when real life introduces complications, distractions, or unexpected challenges. Sprint productivity burns out after 2 weeks because it's not designed for the long-term realities of human psychology and energy management. Most productivity systems fail because they're built around the assumption that you need to optimize every aspect of your life simultaneously. They encourage you to redesign your morning routine, evening routine, workout schedule, nutrition plan, work environment, digital systems, and social relationships all at once. This overwhelming complexity makes implementation nearly impossible because you're trying to change too many variables simultaneously while still maintaining your existing responsibilities and commitments. The productivity industry profits from keeping people constantly seeking new systems because dissatisfaction with current methods drives continuous consumption of new content, courses, and tools. If productivity experts taught simple systems that worked permanently, they'd lose customers after a single purchase. The business model depends on people believing that their current system isn't quite right, and that the next methodology will finally provide the missing piece that makes everything work perfectly. This creates a psychological trap where people become addicted to the feeling of discovering new productivity techniques without ever committing to mastering basic principles consistently. You spend more time learning about productivity than actually being productive because learning feels like progress, while implementation requires facing the harder challenges of sustained focus and disciplined execution. My routine succeeds because it's built around specific psychological principles that work with human nature instead of fighting against it. The system acknowledges that cognitive fatigue from constant context switching is more limiting than willpower alone, so it doesn't depend on perfect self-discipline to maintain. Research shows that resilience to interruptions outperforms willpower-based approaches because it builds sustainable habits rather than relying on mental energy that depletes throughout the day. It recognizes that energy levels fluctuate throughout the day, so it prioritizes the most important work during peak mental capacity periods. It accepts that interruptions and distractions are inevitable in modern life, so it builds buffers and flexibility rather than requiring perfect conditions. The routine focuses on consistency over perfection by making the barrier to entry as low as possible. Instead of requiring elaborate setup or extensive preparation, you can implement the core elements immediately with whatever tools and environment you currently have available. This removes the excuse-making and procrastination that prevents most people from starting new systems because they're waiting for perfect conditions or complete preparation. I've shared this system with dozens of other entrepreneurs and business owners who were struggling with the same productivity challenges I faced. The results have been consistently positive because the system adapts to different business models, personal schedules, and life circumstances without losing its effectiveness. Sarah, who runs a consulting business, increased her client revenue by 180% within 4 months of implementing the routine. Mike, who creates digital products, went from launching 1 product per year to launching 1 product per quarter while working fewer total hours. Jennifer, who manages a small team, doubled her company's monthly recurring revenue while finally achieving the work-life balance she'd been seeking for years. The excitement comes from finally having a productivity system that works with your existing life rather than requiring you to completely rebuild your entire schedule and environment. You don't have to wake up at 4 a.m., meditate for hours, or maintain elaborate organizational systems that require constant maintenance. The routine integrates with whatever schedule you currently have and gradually improves your results through consistent implementation of simple principles. This routine succeeds because it's designed for real humans dealing with real distractions, not perfect conditions where everything goes according to plan, and there are never any unexpected interruptions or challenges that require adaptation and flexibility. The difference between this approach and everything else you've tried comes down to one simple shift in how you think about productivity itself. That shift centers on building systems around 3 core pillars: notification control, meeting minimalism, and outcome-based routines. Productivity in 2025 isn't about collecting more AI tools or grinding longer hours. It's about working intentionally in a world specifically designed to scatter your attention across dozens of digital distractions. Microsoft research shows the average worker faces 275 interruptions daily, making sustained focus your most valuable competitive advantage. Don't wait for perfect conditions to start implementing this system. Pick one element right now and begin today, even if your setup isn't ideal. Start with notification boundaries or batch your AI check-ins once daily to save 23 minutes per interruption. The future belongs to people who can focus deeply, while everyone else chases the next shiny productivity trend.